Hi, my name is Jordyn, and these are my answers and opinions of the major questions of the psychological theories of human nature and experience. So for the first one, what is the nature of the soul? The nature and the purpose of the soul is to strive to be more like Christ. The soul is who we are, and it's the mortal component in human beings as released from their bodies when we die and either spends eternity in heaven or in hell. To continue off that, how is the soul different or the same as the mind? The mind is full of worldly things, whereas the soul is of spiritual and of God. And our mind is of the earth and is different among each individual due from our daily decisions we choose to make. So our soul is from God, but He did give us our mind to choose where our soul goes. And the verse I chose for this is John 3:16. I know everyone knows this, but it's for God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life. And I know this verse is really emphasized a lot, but the reason I chose it is because God did give us His Son, and because Jesus died for our sins, we're able to choose whether we want to follow Him or not. And He gave us our mind to choose whether we want to love Him, but even though He loved us anyway. So even though our soul and mind are different, they both depend on each other, and our decisions affect our soul just how our soul affects our decisions. So they both have the power to either do good things or to do bad things. So number 2 is basically the nature versus nurture and how they affect the development of a person. So nature versus nurture is the argument over the importance of a person's innate qualities versus a person's personal experiences and environmental influences. So from birth to death, our human nature is survival, and that's basically the fight or flight. And what that is, it's a phrase to explain our natural instincts, which are to either fight and defend ourselves in a situation or to run away in a situation or to protect ourselves. So by nature, our instincts are very animalistic, and by nurture, our instincts are based on how we are raised in our surroundings. However, we both need nature and nurture in order to survive in society. And because without nurture, we are animalistic, and without nature, we are defenseless. So number 3, what is the relationship and or connections between the brain and the soul or mind? The mind is a function of the brain. For example, the brain is the organ of the mind, just like how the lungs are the organs for respiration. So both the brain and the mind depend on each other. We cannot think without a brain, and with the brain comes the mind, the ability to form thoughts. So as for our soul, it can reside in the brain as well because our souls live within us and all of us, so it can be in the brain as well. And our souls affect our decisions, so they therefore affect the brain and its functions, which is the mind, and they can alter our choices and decisions. So ultimately, the brain, soul, and the mind all work together throughout our daily lives and through our decisions and our choices. Number 4, what is the nature of human intelligence? How does it function and how is it best measured? So human intelligence is the ability to learn or understand things or to deal with new or difficult situations. It functions through reason, problem solving, and learning. We are able to use our intelligence to reason through situations and form solutions. Intelligence allows us to solve problems through planning that involves an approach and a solution. And also intelligence allows us to learn and retain new information and ideas. So human intelligence is not best measured I believe it's not best measured in just a single way. I think the reason being is because there's all kinds of different types of learners, like visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. So for visual learners take in information best through seeing it, and the best way to measure what they know is to allow them to show it. Auditory learners hear to learn, so they speak to explain, and kinesthetic learners learn hands-on, so they can explain best through demonstration. So that's why I don't think there's just one way to measure it, because it all depends on how a person learns. To continue on this, what is mental illness? Mental illness is any disease of the mind, medical conditions that mess with a person's feelings, thoughts, moods, ability to relate to others, and daily functions. Some examples of mental illnesses are major depression, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. However, mental illnesses can be treated through a treatment plan, which can include medicine and therapy. Number 5, what are the main functions and purposes of psychology? And what are the purposes of psychological treatment? So the 4 major functions and purposes of psychology is to describe, to explain, to predict, and to change. And it's important to describe behavior to gain a better understanding and perspective on what is normal and what is abnormal. Being able to explain behavior is also important because that's the whole purpose of psychology, is it to be able to explain why people do certain things. And once we're able to describe and to explain, the next step is to be able to make predictions about how our thoughts and actions and how it might occur in the future, whether or not it will be. And lastly, to change behavior is important in order to make positive and lasting effects on a person's life. And so now the purposes of psychological treatment are, they're used to treat mental disorders or problems. A trained therapist should be involved in this, and the main purpose of it is to help patients overcome behaviors, thoughts, or difficult situations. And that's it. Is there any questions?
Yeah, could you go back to number 3, I think. Just tell me about the connection.
Connections between the brain and soul, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So how's the mind is a function of the brain. How does it form, do you think?
Like, why is it, like, how does it function?
Yeah, where does it come from? You said it's a function of the brain. So mind is a function of the brain. How does that happen? Do you have any idea? I mean, do you have any ideas about it? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong
How is
answer.
it? I think it deals with back to the soul, how their relationship is, just how I said, like, without the brain, we don't have a mind. So we need, the brain is the organ of the mind. That was like the example, but I think it deals, I don't know, in my opinion, I think it deals with the soul and how, like, the soul and mind kind of connect with each other.
So it's a soul-mind connection. Okay.
That's kind of more of a spiritual thing. Or one of those things you can't explain.
Dr. Amen wrote a book, Healing the Hardware of the Soul. He said the brain was the hardware of the soul, which I think he included the mind and soul together probably.
Yeah.
Because it sounds very similar to what you're saying. So it popped out at me when you said that. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah.